Just let it go live.
Did they not give you Instagram as an option?
They did. I think I'm going to set that up tonight. And then
Okay.
we can probably just do it on Instagram because that would be better because it would alert people. But I think doing it on YouTube, it saves it.
Oh,
It
I thought we
saves
could
it
do
on.
multiple destinations or whatever.
I think we can. We'll play with it again. Doesn't really matter. There's no one watching anyway. I could put something out, but
You could always like do a separate,
yeah.
Except I'm not showing people my girls, but
But yeah, we could point them to it later, I think, because the test actually saved on that Instagram or on the YouTube account. So
Okay. Well, that does make it way easier then, for like posterity reasons.
yeah.
Um,
So yeah, we don't really have to do an intro or anything like that. We'll just start talking.
yeah. So what did you get those plates for?
So yeah, I got those from TMS Titanium. When did I order those? I don't remember. But I use them for all my titanium stuff because I found out that Niagara Specialty Metals here locally buys all their titanium from them and then just marks it up. So I'm like, I'm just going to get it from the source. So
are they re-rolling TMS's material?
No. I believe they're just getting it in. Or maybe, I don't know. Maybe. Oh, you know what? I think they are. Because their finishes are different than TMS's. I think you're right.
Huh.
But still, they're okay. Costs associated with rolling and stuff, sure, but like it's marked up either way. So I got it from them. Actually, the way I got in with them. Oh, I just started ordering online from them, and then I needed to get more. So I talked to Mike over at Keybar Mike.
Yeah,
and
I know he is.
He's like, yeah, I know the owner. Just talk to him and you can get a better deal. So I called him up and actually talked to the VP, and he's like, yeah, we can give you a way better deal. And then, so I order like 10 sheets at a time now.
Nice, yeah. And then you're just shipping that off to Nifty. And,
yeah, get it over to Nifty, and then they take care of it. But these ones I ordered, I just talked to a sales chick and got them, and just because I needed them for prototyping the new design.
Yeah, I still have rectangles that I haven't used yet that are specifically for that to go in the little window fixture. Rectangles, saw cut wet rectangles. So like,
yeah,
same thing.
Yeah, that's what these are. So I figured just run them in the vise, and then I'll make an Op2 fixture similar to how I do my Op2s now. Screw them from the back and then just run it. See how it comes out.
Yeah, I'm like still in love with my idea of Op2 with the wax, and we'll see how that goes.
I've never used that stuff, and I've always been interested in it.
Yeah, I think the wax isn't that expensive. I think it was like $50 for more wax than you could use on like a single knife, but the wax remover or dissolver agent is what gets a little bit more expensive, but it's not. But you can keep reusing it. So like we could have another episode where I'll have my chemistry set in the background, and we can tell people, here's my experience. I think I've made 6 or 7 scales now using the wax method. So you basically have a hot plate with a magnetic stirrer, and you just set your part in and let it melt the wax or dissolve the wax off.
Oh, okay.
Because some of the wax will not come off, which is the whole point. It's supposed to hold your part so you can cut it. But I don't think I'll ever hard mill in it again. because the hard milling heats up the wax and then
Mm,
you lose your adhesion. So
that makes sense.
yeah, I kind of learned that the hard way because uh, I wanted to do the same method for the blade, and I'm never doing that wax shit again. So it's just a nightmare. I think it took me almost 4 hours to cut the part out
Oh wow.
because I had to baby it and just,
Oh
you know, just kiss it to get
yeah.
it out. And then I still broke the tip on the blade, so you know yeah, that's the irony. Still broke the focus.
Oh
Yeah,
weird.
and I broke the tip slotting out this contour because the part moved. Like it
Oh.
moved in the wax and bit it. So
Are you gonna profile it before and then put it in, or
you know, I've been looking at a couple people, and um, I know a couple people leave it in the rectangle, you know, and then just kind of leave a foil to
mm-hmm.
kind of get it out. And I think for the first 50 or 10 or 50 knives, I could totally see doing it that way because the cost of the material is, I mean, it's something, but making a bespoke fixture is also something. So like if people don't buy this version, then I've been so guilty in my woodworking career of making fixtures for stuff that people don't buy. Like I have a graveyard of Pearson pallets that I could
Oh
like.
man. Yeah, I remember earlier on when I was prototyping the Lamia, I just used like rectangle stock and then bolted it in and then just did an adaptive through all of that. And like it took forever, but I was just like, all right, this seems to be working okay. And then yeah, I would over machine, but I think I have that picture somewhere. And then I would flip it in the vise and then do something on the backside. But yeah,
Uh,
I don't know any
yeah,
good way of prototyping.
yeah. I mean, that's why I was like trying to. I spent probably 3 or 4 weeks just figuring out that little window fixture stuff, and I keep telling myself that instead of spending 3 weeks on making a production ready fixture, it's hopefully going to be
Yeah.
reusable.
Yeah.
Um, and then, ironically, I'm going to probably make a new window fixture out of aluminum so that the robot can try to place them in and out of the machine. So that's
Automation.
well, the first set for everyone else is they were cast iron because I didn't want it to vibrate as much in the fourth axis, and I have no clue if that was overkill because I haven't made an aluminum one to compare it to. But for production purposes, it'll be a 3-axis. You manually flip the window over, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm I'm moving my shop, so it's probably not happening in the next 4 weeks.
Yeah. Aluminum, all the things. I remember I was going to start making my fixtures, or the Op 2 fixture anyway, out of 304. No. I exploded a drill in it, and I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, I know some guys that are just using epoxy, where they put epoxy on a greased up blade so that the epoxy doesn't stick.
Mm-hmm.
Like they basically cover it in machine oil or coolant, and supposedly the JV weld doesn't stick to the blade.
Oh.
And then let it cure, and then you've got an Op 2. I think that's nice for certainly prototyping. I think that's great. And then I just can't imagine doing like 10 of them like that. Meaning,
Yeah.
like if you wanted 10 positions on one pallet or something.
Yeah, that'd be threat. I also thought about using JB Weld and then machining it, but also don't know how well it would stick to
I think the aluminum is
door.
harder, and so you
Yeah.
want a harder material. So, like, one of the drawbacks to the wax is when you get closer to the edge, the wax was deforming. Like the ball end mill was literally uh, compressing the wax too much underneath.
Oh yeah, I've had that happen.
Yeah, so I won't be. Yeah, I just won't be using wax, and so if anything, I'd have to. I don't think there's much easier stuff to machine that's harder than aluminum. I just can't
Yeah,
think of.
that's what I currently use now. Is just an aluminum pad.
I mean, a runner-up would be hardened brass. So, like most brass you buy is what they call half hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not aware of this full hard brass, but that would be nice because then you could use the same exact steel tool in the brass and not gum it up. And then, meaning if you're like really trying to go for as much accuracy as you could get out of your machine, you would use the same tools that you cut the op2 fixture with to cut the blade.
Yeah,
But we have probes, so we don't need to do that.
exactly.
I'm just talking about, like, if you've got a little hobby machine, like my router doesn't have a probe and I can get really good accurate results, but then I have to use the same tool that I cut the fixture with to cut the part right after. Like, you can't be doing tool changes or anything. I don't have an ATC in my router.
Yeah, I remember earlier on using a router for scales, and I have an X-Carve, and I had to like lock the motors up when it went to the home position to then change the tool out.
Yeah, I didn't have an X-Carve, but I had a band. It was one of those ones running on the belts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll think of it here in a minute.
The Shapeoko?
Yes, thank you. It was the Shapeoko, like double XL.
Yeah.
And we used to run 2 foot by 2 foot sheets of foam for our squares. And so I would use 3M double-sided, or not double-sided, but the spray adhesive.
Yep.
So we'd put blue tape on the foam so that the spray adhesive wouldn't stick.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a production. We made like maybe 1,000 or more little pockets that way. It was disgusting.
Oh yeah.
Now I have a vacuum table.
I don't miss making scales that way either, because like the X-Carve is not by any stretch accurate, and then when you try to dial it in, it would like, because I was cutting the way I was machining it, it was just like not optimal, and it would move like the steps as it was cutting because it was cutting such hard material. So it would move the steps, and then the next thing it would go over and it would like do the profile after the holes were already drilled, and then the profile would just be off by a little bit. So I'd still have to go in and like fix it. So what I ended up doing was just cutting it oversized, taking it out, and then putting it on like a router table with like a round over bit. I think it was like a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch or something like that, with a bearing on top.
Yep.
And doing it that way.
Yeah, I did some rich light trays for our ice presses, and that roundover bit kind of scared me, because it's just like spinning in open space.
Oh yeah.
And then if you push on the wrong side of that beading tool, it like catches the part and wants to whip your hand out. Yeah, so needless to say, I don't do that anymore, or at least if I can help it. And that's because we were trying to do one op in the router and then finish op on the router table.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I really hate using the router in general. I'm actually going to try to sell it here in the next couple months, I think,
Nice.
and then hopefully find somebody to cut my foam. So if anyone listens to this and wants to price out cutting my foam, probably the biggest thing is you got to be within a couple hours of Illinois, because otherwise the shipping is more than the product.
Yeah.
Unless you do a couple skid loads. So like when I buy foam, we're buying a 4 by 8 foot skid that's almost 6 feet high of foam, just to kind of make it worthwhile. So like
I hate buying material.
yeah, I mean the skid's like between $1,200 and $1,800 worth of foam, and then the shipping's $400.
Oh yeah.
So it's the
insane.
shipping's $400 no matter how much you put on the skid. So we try to put more on the skid.
Yeah.
The skid weighs like 80 pounds. So you're just paying for space in the truck.
Yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah, and then the reason I love knives is shipping's not really a driver in anything.
Yeah, no.
That sheet of titanium you bought is way more than the shipping.
Yep. Yeah.
How do you do your packaging right now? Do you do the little tacos?
So I used to do that, and then I stopped because I had a fiasco with the shipping. He would ship stuff like UPS, which was awesome, but then the rates changed, so then he started shipping it USPS, and then they lost a package. So it was like $700 worth of tacos that just got lost, and I was like, I'm not doing this. So the company I use now is called Packola, and they make boxes, custom boxes. They're all laser cut, and so these ones just fold together, has my logo on it. I got the craft paper version just to keep things, not so much ink and stuff, and then just got plain black ink. But they can do like gloss, matte, all that stuff. Pretty much anything you want, they can do it. But I use that company for both the fixed blades and the folders currently.
Nice. Yeah, and it's not print on demand, but kind of similar, where it's like
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it took, like, when I put in my first order, I think it took like 2.5 weeks to get out everything, maybe 3. And it was like 500 of each size, maybe 1,000 of each size. I can't remember. But yeah, it wasn't bad.
Yeah. Yeah. For my pens, we used the same company that Koenig recommended to me.
Mm-hmm.
They're out of, I think, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Very reasonable price, but the issue was I had to buy 1,000 of them, so it's like a couple grand for boxes.
Yeah, I think with the new folder, I may end up 3D printing an insert or something, and then putting it in there.
For my hammer faces, we're experimenting with urethane faces for making a soft face hammer.
Mm-hmm.
My thinking is that you would 3D print the box and then 3D print the urethane liner so that you won't scratch anything. Like, it's super soft. It's like 70 on the Shore A scale, which means it's your fingernail can like.
Is that hard to print? You gotta like dry it beforehand, or
you gotta do the 8-hour dry cycle. And to be honest, I'm having somebody here locally print it for me because I'm not a 3D printing expert. And I would probably pay him to print my boxes too. I mean, we have one Bamboo printer, but I'm not buying 6 printers just so I can
Yeah, that's another thing
Scale up.
too. Is like if I end up doing an insert, I probably have to get it printed elsewhere. But just a prototype, I would do it in house because like I know, I think machine wise, when they ship their folders, it's like a whole thing. Like the packaging and everything is all 3D printed. But he has like 6 bamboos printing all the time, and I'm just like, I can't do that. I could, but I don't have the room.
Well, what I told the guy I'm working with is that if it gets to the point that we're ordering from him all the time, I'll pay him to come train us, and we'll buy a couple printers. But I'd happily just keep paying him, like on a knife that's a couple $100 or more. The 3D print is not a big cost driver.
Right.
But the bigger reason is, even if it's, say it's $10 or $15 to print the box, the beauty of that is he'll print 5 of them, or he'll print 50 of them. But I'm not buying 1,000 from some company in Massachusetts, and now I've got 800 boxes left.
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe not that many. I think I've sold, between the pens and the pencils, maybe 400.
Oh, nice.
So, well, it's covered the initial cost of buying the box,
Right.
but I still have 600 boxes that I'm not really sure what I'm doing with right now. Only because I'm not sure I want to make pens anymore with the clicker that we made.
Mm-hmm.
Clicker was getting some warranties, and I mean, we've replaced the mechanisms, but it's just more like I'd rather remake the clicker from scratch than just keep going off the same platform.
Right. Yeah. Just band-aiding it, basically.
Yeah, and it's been tempting to go to like a bolt action, but because that is like it's literally bulletproof. Like if you break that, then you probably did something bad.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, it seemed like we were kind of talking about packaging for a while, so we could call that packaging section or something.
There's the packaging section.
We didn't really have an agenda, to be clear. So
Yeah, we don't need an agenda. So yeah, I can tell you about my meeting I had with the cup wheel thing.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So getting into cup wheel grinding. I had a meeting with Eagle Abrasives. They're out of North Carolina. Chatted with the sales guy for a little while. Came to the conclusion that I will be ordering an 11A2 wheel, which is that shape. There is a 6A2, which is just like a normal cup. He called it something, but I forgot. And then I send him over the step file of the Mari Tool face mill holder that I'm going to be using, so they can pull dimensions off of that and get me a better quote. And then he said that there's a few different bond types. I actually have them pulled up here. Obviously, the main one is the resin bond. And then you have a polyamide bond, which is harder than the resin bond, but it doesn't cut as quickly as the resin bond. And then there's a bond in between those called the B bond, which I think I'm going to go with. So it gets you like cutting action is pretty good. Tool life is pretty good. It's like kind of like they're all arounder as far as bonds. And then I asked them if like they use like a competitor's bond, or if they have their own bonding. They use their own bond, so it's not like it's going to be a 3M or a Triolite, whatever that company is. And he said the thing with those companies that they'll make you a custom wheel, but it's going to be way more expensive than what they would charge, because they'd rather just sell the off-the-shelf wheel. because I want to get the specific arbor hole at 1 inch instead of 1 1/4, because I could not find anything as far as mounting that had a 1/4 inch arbor.
Yeah, you'd have to call up Mari Tool, call up Frank and be like, I'm gonna order one. You should make 10 of them.
So that was going to be my next thing, is like call him up and be like, hey man, there's a lot of guys that are using these wheels. Could you just make a bunch of tool holders? Hopefully you sell
You
them.
never know. You never know. I ordered some custom ball end mills from Frank one time, and Aaron Goff got him to really popularize the end mill that I use all the time, which is that 60 thou rad 6 flute. It's like, I think $15 or $18 a piece. It's like dirt cheap.
Yeah.
And it lasts long enough for what it costs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I hard mill all of my bevels currently with the 8 flute version of that.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I need to switch over to that 8 flute, but sometimes it's not available because people like you are buying them all. So
you have 100 of them over there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, that could be a whole nother episode where it's like, do I buy the name brand from like some fancy company, or do I just buy Mari Tool?
Right. So I found too that like you can't get those from other companies. Like, not even Helical has that kind of stuff.
I've been buying more Freza or Frasia, however you say it. Switzerland company. I really like their high feed end mills for titanium. So I'm cutting a 30 thou slot with their 1 millimeter, or I'm cutting a 39 thou. Sorry, for anyone who want to correct me, it's 39 thou slot with a 1 millimeter high feed, and it's almost twice as fast as the one from Seiko, because it's got a 3rd flute. Most of these are 2 flute high feeds. This is a 3 flute.
Right.
So I mean, I think these more expensive brands have a place, just like Grimsmo. Grimsmo's using a helical high feed.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to message him and be like, why don't you just use Freza? You already.
I actually think he switched to DeBoer tools, which is made in Canada, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I just bring up the fact that, like, I think with Mari Tool, I've been a little disappointed in the aluminum cutting tools, but this is 3 or 4 years ago, so I'm not trying to knock them. But those little 6 flute and 8 flute 1/4 inchers, I think, have been very, very consistent.
Yeah, I actually have a few of the, I forget what line they are, the most expensive, like rainbow colored DLC coated ones. I use those for my aluminum fixtures, and
yeah. I mean, I just want to clarify that, like, because they're working with HTC, who's like the company underneath.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, I just think that for aluminum tooling, the price of the tool is really not as critical. Like,
right.
You make thousands of parts with one tool, especially a rougher.
Right.
But it could have just been that I didn't know how to dial in their finisher. Whereas, like, the GAR or the helical might have been easier to use at the time.
I do a terrible approach with, so I use that tool for a rougher and a finisher. Because why not?
Oh, you're talking about the little bull nose?
No. I don't use the bull nose. So I'm referencing their like mirror line. Things. Only because currently I use a 3/8 1-inch Eagle Claw from Carbide Cutting Tools, because that was on Within Tolerance podcast. He was on there, Dave, I believe his name is. But I use that, and I'm like, oh, you can use it as a rougher and a finisher. Cool. I'll just use all of my aluminum tools as roughers and finishers, because they should, like, the way my brain works is like all tools should be equal, sort of, unless you spend a lot more money. Obviously, they're not going to be equal, but if you're within the same price point, they should be. So I was like, yeah, I'll just blast out the RPMs and then just go slow around, the profiles and use that as a finisher. I mean, it seems to work okay, but also the things that I'm making in aluminum aren't super critical as far as the finishes.
Yeah, I think, the other reason you can get away with that is you're not cutting aluminum all day.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about chip management. Whereas, like,
yeah,
part of the reason I use a rougher is to break the chips into smaller pieces.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, after a round of making fixtures, yeah, you get a lot of chips.
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, I in some ways it's good to use the same tool because you're limited on tools in your carousel anyway. So it's more about just having to load more tools in and load them out. So, like,
right.
We only have 30 tool carousel. When we're running certain products, we use 28 or 29 pockets. So, like, when we run the dowel plates, to get the speed and the cost that we're looking for, every single hole gets its own drill. So when you're doing, and then we have 3 or 4 sister tools for the rougher that cuts the A2. I was listening to the bomb where Saunders was talking about only getting 40-some minutes out of a tool. And just kind of accepting that, and it's kind of like, yeah, we might get over an hour on some, but it's kind of a bell curve, and we're just using the Mari tool 5 flute like stub, and so we track all of our tool life because it's one of the biggest expenses for that product. Is just we easily spend a couple of dollars in carbide per part,
right?
And we're only selling a $60 product. So, like, the carbide tooling is a big chunk of the cost.
Absolutely.
But anyway, the reason I brought that up is I think you can spend a lot of time trying to optimize stuff. But just like he said, in the end, they just need to ship product. And so when it becomes a problem, when you're like, oh man, I have to send Mari tool like another $800, or I gotta, for one end mill, then it's like, okay, now I got to solve this problem. Whereas, like, I've been guilty of solving tiny problems.
Oh yeah,
because they might be a problem, and then that product line doesn't work out, and you just spend a day or two on not the right thing.
Oh yeah. I feel that way about my sheaths right now because I spent
that's right.
a lot of money and a lot of time figuring all that out, and now I'm just going to end up hiring a company to do it.
I mean, look, I think sometimes I think there's value in that. Like, you learn that you don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. That's a win.
Yep. And the key there is you won't.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, just like we could benefit from occasionally owning our own lathe, and I think I'm just always gonna buy lathe parts from other people.
Yeah, that's another. Space is a limiting factor for me on that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think I think you just gotta, do the Pareto principle where it's like, what's my actual biggest problem
Right. Yeah.
versus what's the most interesting problem.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
for me, it's sales. So I need to sell more woodworking tools, or I need to sell a knife.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I tend to find the smallest bottlenecks first and then tackle those. Um, Not that bevels are a big bottleneck, but they do, because it's like every time I have to do bevels, I got to spend X amount of dollars on end mills. So it's like, or I could spend X amount of dollars on this cup wheel, figure all that out, and then figure out tool life. And then if I need to buy a new wheel, which, let's call it $300, if they're $300 a piece and I can get 100 blades out of one, that's like a huge cost savings doing
yeah,
it that way.
the other thing too is the consistency. So, like, from blade to blade, that cup wheel is going to be pretty consistent.
Right.
Like, now the first blade and the 300th blade or the 100th blade might not be identical, but because that CBN takes a while to wear down, it's going to be very consistent. And I think there's a lot of value in that, even if it was the same per unit cost.
Right. Yeah.
Versus, my experience, even with hard milling, this one was, if you get a little bit of chip drag, where like a chip adheres itself to the cutting edge, now you get smearing.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, now I have to hand finish that out, or I gotta, play with it. And so,
Yeah, and that's what I've run into in the past is like, because of all of that, the finishing becomes more of the bottleneck. So then I got to finish out or figure out the finishing, and then it's like, all right, now what kind of tumbling media do I get, and like what kind of? And now I've just been like blasting everything, and people have been loving that finish. So I'll just blast it and then do a light tumble, and it comes out fine, and you don't see any of that chip smearing or anything like that, and it doesn't really affect the action at all. So I'll use like 100
rough blasting.
Yeah, so like after everything is done being machined, I'll bore out everything and then take it over to the blasting cabinet and blast it with like 120 grit aluminum oxide, and then put it in the tumbler for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and kind of give it a nice like stone wash look, and then call it a day.
Nice.
It's like I would love to just put it in the tumbler and let it tumble and like give that nice tumbled stone wash finish, but like having those steps in the blade, it's not going to tumble those out. So it's going to, the way that it hits, the stone is going to hit the highest point and it's not going to get in there. So even if you did have chip dragging, it would still show to a degree, where it's blasting will just blast all that away.
Yeah, that's a good point. All the blades that I've ever made have always been, how do you say, like very simple bevels. So like no hollow grind, or if it's a hollow, I purposely leave the machining marks in there.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I never thought about blasting them before tumbling them. I always thought like, oh, I'm just going to tumble them, because that's how we treat all of our other products that get tumbled. There is no prep.
Yeah.
I will say the bead blasting or the vapor honing is or the glass bead is kind of interesting, but people should be following the Hog House guys, because they have a couple posts where they show like the different finishes all on one scale. It's pretty cool. I mean, they almost made like a camo.
Really? I gotta check out that post.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in their feed, but I know for a fact they've shown like the 3 finishes in one scale. And they've been super helpful. Like I asked them a couple questions and they started shooting me like pictures of how to build it and stuff. And I'm like,
Oh yeah, yeah,
"No."
because they built their own vapor hone. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the way to go. That's another reason why too is like instead of deburring certain areas of the scale, I'll just put it in the blasting cabinet and blast it. I know a lot of people want like just the plain stonewash raw finish, but it's like there's certain burrs that like I can't get to with a VMC, and like I need them gone, so I'll be blasting it.
You just need tinier tools.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, you know, yeah, I think it's tough too because you can have the machine do it, but then you're like, when you're in production, adding a couple minutes starts to add up.
yeah, for sure.
But I mean, my goal is to be able to offer an as machined product, but that's simply because if you can try to achieve that and say 10% fail, you can tumble that 10% and sell them to people that want to tumble,
Yeah, absolutely.
if that makes sense.
Yep.
Um, whereas, like, if you ignore the burrs and then always rely on the blasting, my concern is that something's going to get through and then we're having to rework it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And we already have a lot of rework for our tumbled products. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Because we have parts stick to each other.
Yep.
And so they won't finish properly where they're, suctioned together.
What's another thing too is like if you tumble and like say like you have your lock scale, you have to kind of bend open the lock a little bit in order for media to get in there. You can use very fine media, but like still, how effective is that? I've used multiple sizes, and I'm just like I couldn't find one that would actually work. I was gonna buy like walnut and like try that and see what that did, but I don't think it's gonna deburr anything. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, I mean, I think I already suggested to you that Japanese company called Zbeck with an X.
yeah.
To try to do it in the machine. I'm just seeing if I can find one in my drawer here. Yeah, so this is the little 6mm, and these bristles are super stiff.
Yeah.
And you can adjust like how far out the bristles stick.
Because I use a brush research brush for Op 1 to kind of get rid of a lot of burrs, but Op 2 is like it's kind of a pain.
Yeah, no, it definitely is a pain because even on this one, I ran a deburr toolpath right down in there to try to get that, and it just pushed the burr down.
Yep. Yeah.
Which means I'd have to look at my cam because I forget how I did this, but I think what it would mean is I'd have to rerun the slot again. It's kind of like whenever you engrave something, you kind of face it, engrave it, face it again to get rid of all the burrs from the. I don't know if you do that, but.
Yep. Yeah, I don't face it, but I'll rerun the engraving toolpath. Like I'll run it again, and it kind of cleans everything up. But if the engraver is like dull, then it doesn't really do anything. It just pushes all the burrs. But yeah, for like that lock bar cutout, what I've recently been doing is cutting it out, slotting it out, and then putting the same tool back in and just stepping over a thou or two and cleaning up the walls. And that seems to help in there. But there's other areas where it's like a burr always rears its ugly little head and you can't get to it. optimally.
Yeah, I think, and to be honest, I haven't made enough of these to even like pretend to know where the burrs are going to come. But I think what helps is we've already made tens of thousands of aluminum parts, but with the ease in which it is to deburr aluminum, it's like so easy. It's like
Yeah,
it's so soft, and it just
yeah, it just comes right off.
yeah, and so whereas with the titanium or hardened steel, like you make a mistake and you'll see that mistake after tumbling.
Oh yeah, hardened steel is like such a pain in the ass to deburr. Effectively,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges for me is to come up with a way to only have tabs on the blade or on the edge. Because like
Cup wheel, man, cup wheel.
Because I just have zero desire to have somebody have the responsibility of getting this super clean.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
The spine.
thing. Like you could just leave, like you could just machine the whole thing in there, the profile and all that stuff. Leave a tab on the blade side, and then flip it over, and then face off the other side, and then do your bevels with that tab. Because that's what I currently do with the Shark, the fixed blade. Is I leave a tab on the blade and do the bevels. I used to do them top down. Now I do it bottom up, and it leaves enough meat on there. So I just break the tab off at the end, and it still holds everything fine.
Yeah, no, I've always tried to like utilize high feed because high feed just shoves everything down.
Yep.
And so it doesn't have as much side load. But yeah, the cup is tempting. I was just thinking that part of the reason I'd want to stick to end mills is I like the idea of like leaving a pattern.
Oh yeah, for sure.
In the blade, but not everyone's going to want that. You know, it's like
right.
You know,
I'm probably going to leave the steps on the Lamia for a while until, because that blade has to get redesigned to accommodate a tab to clean up the spine. And then I'll probably slot it off at the blade and then heat treat it. But the Shark for sure is getting the cup wheel, and then the new design for sure is getting a cup wheel. But yeah, that spine is a pain to clean up.
Yeah, remind me how you say the new model.
Hadouken.
Okay. I'm familiar with like Dragon Ball and all that stuff.
Yeah, so it's like
not the Dragon Ball. Which
Street Fighter.
Street Fighter. Thank you.
Yeah.
I played a lot of that.
Like Super Punch. I forget what it means. It's something fist. Hadouken.
It's fine. I think people come up with their own nicknames anyway, so it's just kind of like.
Oh yeah. This one locks too. I got it to lock.
Yeah, the thing about plastic is it's pretty good at like showing deformation. Right?
Oh yeah. This thing's gonna be sweet. Messed it up. Yeah, I can't wait to start making these and hopefully get them in people's hands.
Yeah, and I know we talked, gosh, it seems like yesterday, but I think a couple days ago, and it's kind of like my question was, were you doing this because you felt like people were kind of tired of the Lumia? But it sounds like you're just looking to do something new for yourself.
I'm getting tired of the Lumia.
Yeah.
That's why I did this.
Yeah. I understand.
Oh man, it's like
Yeah,
I don't know. I think I tried to revise the Lumia as much as possible, and I think I got it to a point where I could literally just I could automate it at some point and just let it run. It's to that point, but I was like, I need to do something else. Yeah, I could make a larger version or a smaller version or left-handed version, but I'd rather just do a new design.
Yeah, I think certainly for me too. I part of the reason I want to make this business work is because I enjoy making new things. And if I were just making the same 3 or 4 things, then I can still enjoy that for other reasons, but
Right.
It's been hard because what sells well are the same 5 or 6 products for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I keep coming out with new things and they just don't ever reach the same level as those other 5 or 6.
Right.
So there's been a lot of early deaths for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how
on
how
Amazon.
many new products. I mean, I'm sure you can make a lot of new products for woodworking, but how, for instance, for knives, it's oh, just make a new design and people are on it and it sells. Whereas the new designs for woodworking tools has to, do some sort of function. It has to function a specific way to do a specific task, whereas a knife, it just does one task.
Yeah, I think you are onto something there, which is it's been difficult to come up with a new feature set and be price competitive at the same time. So people don't collect tools in woodworking the same way people collect knives.
Right.
And that's been disappointing because I love the hammers that we make. And if people bought more of them, I probably could just make a business out of just making new hammerheads all the time.
Right.
Especially brass, because it's easy to machine. So it's whatever you can draw, basically. Which is why we have those twisted geodesics to try to spice it up a little bit. But yeah, people just don't collect. There are hammer collectors, don't get me wrong. There are some guys on my email list that have bought every hammer I've ever made. They have several.
Right.
But it's not
it's not it's not as widespread as knives or putters. I know putters are a huge thing.
Really?
Oh yeah. Golf putters. There's a lot of people that make putters and are very successful with just making putters.
Oh, I understand that people buy $1,000 putters. What I was confused by is, do people collect the putters?
I think
I've got
so.
10
Yeah.
putters.
I think so.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. Because there's a guy or a company or a guy that makes a Scotty Cameron. So there's super popular putters, and I think they make other clubs too. But they had a collab with a very popular golf club company. But yeah, there's pros obviously that play with these guys' putters and they're custom made putters, and then there's putter junkies, I'm sure, that just collect putters and have a putter budget.
Oh, I've golfed with guys that, clearly they enjoy the collection of the gear.
Oh yeah.
Not because they're a great golfer, but because they enjoy buying the best.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I golf twice a year. Yeah, it's
I don't golf at all. I can't do it.
I didn't golf at all last year, I can tell you that, but Too busy stuck in this place
Oh yeah.
to, or
It's a
trying to
grind.
spend time at home. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah, we're getting close to the hour. I don't know if we want to try to cap it close to
Yeah,
an.
we can try. Yeah, we can try to cap it at like an hour. Seems fine.
We didn't get anyone in the live today, so we'll have to work on that for the
That's
next.
okay. We'll add the Instagram or whatever, and then I'll link people to that episode or this episode.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if people leave questions either on YouTube or even on Instagram, because
let's see. Oh yeah, I think you can add more than one. Yeah, we'll figure it out. I'll add Instagram here after this recording and then see if it works. We can do like a test thing at some point, maybe.
well, I mean, if it works the way it's supposed to, the whole value of this StreamYard product is that we should be able to hit multiple destinations at the same time.
Yeah.
And so, the beauty of YouTube is it'll transcribe this whole thing for us.
Yes.
If we ever wanted to post it somewhere.
Yes.
But the other thing I was thinking about is just, like we talked before, which is close to the end, we just address whatever questions are in the chat box.
Well, do you have any questions? Knife making or otherwise?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing that I'm going to be figuring out, you could see where the detent track kind of shits the bed here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be adding more material there. And then I think my biggest challenge is understanding if it's going to be worth putting the detent ball even further forward on the lock face.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of guys do, where they it's almost like the ball is the first thing. And so we'll talk offline on maybe how to play with that, or do it live in Fusion, like in the next show or whatever. But just, and probably the only other thing I'll share is I don't know if you remember, but I machine all these slightly different sizes. So the fun thing is you just hot swap these to get different.
Oh yeah, lockups.
Different lockups. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it seems like everyone's got a different way to do the detent. So that'll be the question that I'll have is, some people lap them flat, which seems kind of nice, but it also seems maybe unnecessary. And I'm sure I could get a lot of shit for that, but it's fine.
You just gotta buy the right detent ball that self-flattens like I do.
Well, aren't you using the silicon carbide though?
Nope. Zirconium oxide.
Oh, the slightly softer, I guess.
Slightly softer, and it's tougher than silicon nitride.
Yeah, I mean,
and
not a big deal.
over time it wears a micro flat in the detent, and you get a smoother action the more you use the knife, the smoother the action becomes. Yes, flattening it right out of the box and having it smooth right out of the box is nice, but I feel like the allure of owning a collector's item is to get it to the point where you're happy with it. But there's arguments either way.
The other thing I find fascinating is people talk about the smoothness of the blade face, but it makes its own track almost immediately. Like that ball is plowing through that.
Yeah.
It's already This is
Yeah,
a thing.
you're at like 90 Rockwell for one of those balls, so it doesn't really matter what the hardness is of your blade. The finish, somewhat, but like really, it's going to be wearing its own track in there.
Well, that's why I did something kind of silly where it's like I did a very fine finish mill where the ball goes.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's a much rougher rougher finish where the ball isn't, because it's just like
right.
I'm basically trying to avoid going to the surface grinder, which is kind of ironic because we have a surface grinder. But I hate surface grinding stuff.
Yeah, that's like the worst thing ever, is to stand in front of a surface grinder and grind all day.
Yeah, I look at all the companies that have them, and I can appreciate the nice grain finish. Like, we sell dowel plates. I
Mm-hmm.
love how they look.
Right.
But I have zero desire to buy a nicer surface grinder so that I can hit like tenths on this thing.
Double this grinding, you can hit tenths across the part.
Well, but that's also why I'm doing the inset, because I can hit tenths.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing too. Yeah.
So like, if anything, I'll be making this much bigger. I decided I want the double row skiffs instead of the single. I was trying to go for the least amount of material out of the scale. So like, there's no material cut out of here,
Mm-hmm.
because I was worried about the thickness here. And then when I went to Maker Syndicate, everyone's like, yeah, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Just chug it right out.
Because I was worried about taking more out of this to go to a quarter, or not quarter.
Oh,
sorry.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So to clarify for everyone, I was trying to use, let's see if I can find it in real time. I was trying to use these 1 millimeter balls.
Oh, yep.
Because I wanted to remove the least amount of material.
Mm-hmm.
And in the hopes of having the stiffest, blade, no blade play or anything, because it's all as rigid as it can be. But
double row skips will actually help. Will help with that.
And I get that, because the bigger the radius or diameter,
mm-hmm.
the less leverage you have on the pivot. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and maybe at another time we'll talk about 3D printing these things, because I tried doing that with an SLS printer, one of those 3 things.
Yeah.
Didn't go well. Because I was trying to print 1 millimeter holes.
Oh yeah, that's probably going to be a pain.
Well, what it was, the plastic was just too brittle that I chose, and what I'm thinking about now is like making it a flexure where like there's little slits.
Yep. That's how these IKBS ones are. You can't really see,
what you're saying,
but it's got slots.
Yeah.
Where the balls go.
So the idea would be to let the slot take up that deformation and not crack the plastic.
Yeah.
Are those steel?
Yeah, I think they are.
You're not buying those, are you?
No, that's on a Shirogorov F95. Oh, yeah. They're all wire EDM cages, and then they like lap them.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know why they don't have cage bearings, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, we already talked about. I had questions around like Teflon coating washers, and trying trying to like get the best of both worlds, where it's like super smooth action without worrying about dirt. And I guess the dirt's just going to collect in the Teflon anyway. So it's like,
Yeah.
same thing with the bronze too. Like,
Oh yeah.
um,
Yeah, the PB, and then they have like Nylotron washers too, which have like a moly impregnated washer. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, like I said, I think the next design piece is just getting a detent that actually works. That works well, I should say.
Right.
But I doubt it'll be ready for the next episode. So it'll be one of those where, you know, you can just ride me on it and then be like, yep. Trying to move the shop in 20 some days.
Oh man.
In fact, the riggers are set for either the 23rd or 24th of January. So,
Oh wow.
yeah. Just, just spending all kinds of money here in the next 4 weeks.
Ugh. Yeah.
We're only moving 15 minutes, and it's going to be close to $7,000.
Gotta love the riggers.
Prices.
Oh yeah.
That's Chicago prices.
Oh yeah.
I've used guys that are cheaper. I think I paid $4,000 to move before, but you get what you pay for, and there's too much money on the line here. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I've watched guys drop machines before. Thankfully, it wasn't my machine. And anyway, it's just it's one of those days where I'd be better off just going home,
Oh yeah.
and just call my guys at the end of the day and be like, "Is it done?" I'd be anxious the whole day, right? I'd be like,
Oh yeah.
my phone every 5 seconds. So in the end, I'm better off being here. But I'm just saying, like, that won't happen with the guys I hired. So,
Right.
meaning they'll bring in the right size forklift the first time.
Yep.
And the space that we're in now is so much easier to move in and out of. The last space I was in was like a shoebox.
Oof.
And so, and it had elevation change in the middle of the shop. So the floor dropped 8 or 10 inches
Ugh.
in like a 1 foot span. So it was like this,
Oh man.
and that's where like the machine would tip on forks and like smack around, and
Oh yeah. Ugh.
just, I don't miss that shop at all. But it's what we could afford at the time. So
Yeah.
can't afford this place. That's why I'm moving.
There you go. Shrink it down.
Shrink to grow. Yes, that's the strategy.
That's right.
But yeah, I guess we could spend another hour on here, but I think we'll
Yeah, we'll call it, and then we'll
we haven't even named this thing yet, so that's good.
we'll figure it out. It's baby steps.
Awkward silence.
Awkward silence just for you guys. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it, and then we'll talk more next week.
That silence was to weed out all the fair weather people.
No, man, there's like nobody watching anyway. All right, man. Take it easy.
Yeah, we'll see ya.